because we now know who all the prosecutors will be on Diddy's trial. They're all women. They have assembled a team of female prosecutors, and that is definitely not by accident.
I would have thought Diddy would be throwing all his celebrity mates under the bus.
I mean, that could potentially be coming when it's time for court and when it's time for him to testify. But what we're seeing right now is how important public relations really are to Sean Combs. He's desperately trying to control the narrative behind bars, allowing his attorneys to do documentaries.
The courtroom was electric as the prosecution rolled out what they called evidence, unlike anything seen before. The atmosphere shifted from tense to utterly unhinged. And at the center of it all was the man once hailed as the king of hip-hop, Sean Diddy Combs, a music mogul whose empire now stands on the brink of collapse. This wasn't just another celebrity scandal. This felt like the unraveling of a decades-long conspiracy, a web so intricate and far-reaching it seemed to implicate half of Hollywood. The headlines barely scratched the surface. What was happening inside that courtroom was the kind of drama you couldn't script, and yet it felt almost too surreal to be real.
The defense wanted to propose a question on, after the potential jurors filled out their questionnaire, have they seen any news media, any documentaries, anything just relating to a news medium, and whether or not they saw it in between them filling out the questionnaire to Monday morning when they go to jury selection.
It started with a video. The prosecution didn't just play it, they unleashed it. The grainy footage, smuggled out from one of Diddy's infamous parties, left the court in stunned silence. Witnesses described the atmosphere in the room as palpable, with audible gasps and murmurs rippling through the gallery. The video allegedly showed a lavish scene, dimly lit rooms filled with velvet furniture, shadowy figures moving about, and a central table that defied comprehension. A woman lay motionless on the table, surrounded by an assortment of fruits and delicacies, her body adorned with strategically placed garnishes. Diddy, dressed in one of his signature white ensembles, was seen laughing, eating, and gesturing to his guests. The footage, though far from explicit, was enough to send shockwaves through the courtroom. But it wasn't just the content of the video, it was what it symbolized. For years, rumors of Diddy's legendary gatherings had circulated, but this was the first time the public got a glimpse of what went on behind closed doors. And then came the kicker. As the video ended, the prosecution dropped a bombshell. This wasn't just a glimpse into Diddy's world. It was a key piece of evidence tying him to a series of shadowy dealings that went far beyond the parties themselves. According to the prosecutors, the gatherings weren't just hedonistic playgrounds for the rich and famous. They were allegedly staging grounds for something much darker, something meticulously orchestrated to create leverage, loyalty, and silence among Hollywood's elite. The word systematic manipulation echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot. This wasn't just about Diddy anymore. This was about everyone who had ever been in his orbit.
Jesse, we've been talking about this, just how confident the defense appears that, they could get off on these charges. They could be acquitted, or possibly, who knows what could happen, just because, you are rolling the dice. This really does feel like just kind of like, a gambling a little bit with Diddy's life in a sense, just because, if you're offered maybe X amount of time versus this huge amount of time, which could be.
And who exactly was in that orbit? The list of names was staggering. Will Smith, Jada Pinkett Smith, Jennifer Lopez, Bruce Willis, Leonardo DiCaprio, Paris Hilton. The roll call read like a who's who of A-listers. Photos resurfaced, showing these celebrities mingling at Diddy's infamous white parties, or posing for the cameras at his Hamptons estate. But while many of these events were public, the prosecution hinted at a much darker undercurrent. They alleged that behind the velvet ropes, there was a side to these gatherings that few ever saw, a side that involved whispered deals, unspoken rules, and, allegedly, acts that could destroy careers if exposed.
I would say don't just start filming me without asking me.
Oh my goodness.
If you could film me.
Astaire, come help us again, please. I'm still dealing with foolishness.
The most damning allegations, however, revolved around the so-called Inner Circle, a group of trusted confidants and enablers who allegedly helped Diddy maintain control. Among them was a bodyguard who claimed he had been privy to everything, from the meticulous planning of the parties to the silencing of those who dared to speak out. In a shocking move, the bodyguard took the stand and described an incident involving a high-profile celebrity, someone whose name had been redacted from the court documents. The bodyguard claimed he had been instructed to escort the individual out of a private room after they had expressed discomfort with what they had witnessed. The implication was clear. Even those at the top of the Hollywood food chain weren't immune to the pressures of Diddy's world. And then there was the matter of the so-called freak-offs. Though the term was never explicitly defined in court, witnesses described them as private after-parties where the rules were different, looser, darker, and far more secretive. The prosecution painted a picture of these events as labyrinthine affairs, with multiple rooms, themed setups, and an atmosphere designed to disorient and overwhelm. Guests, they claimed, were often encouraged or pressured to partake in activities that went far beyond what was considered socially acceptable. And while some of this could be dismissed as Hollywood excess, the prosecution argued that it wasn't just about indulgence. It was about control.
Poor dancing to the 1988 Grammy-winning song Parents Just Don't Understand, performed by her husband.
The most chilling revelation came from a series of text messages allegedly sent by Diddy to members of his staff. The messages, which were read aloud in court, detailed elaborate preparations for an upcoming gathering. They included instructions to secure the floors, double-check the guest list, and, most disturbingly, make sure the room is stocked. The prosecution didn't elaborate on what, exactly, needed to be stocked, but rumors swirled that it included items confiscated during a raid on Diddy's properties earlier this year. Among the items allegedly seized were cases of personal products often associated with intimate settings, raising questions about their intended use.
And the judge said that, he seemed to be taking this kind of matter seriously. Now, I will just kind of preface it and say it. I haven't seen the documentary, but it's not out of the realm, or it's not out of the norm that she even went on this documentary as well, too, because she had previously gone on another documentary and kind of talked about her client's accusations against Diddy as well, too. So I was surprised that they brought up this particular documentary. Again, I don't know the extent of what she had said, but the defense seemed very annoyed in a way. And
what made all of this even more explosive was the growing list of celebrities who had either distanced themselves from Diddy or refused to comment altogether. Leonardo DiCaprio, for instance, was quick to release a statement through his publicist, claiming he hadn't been in contact with Diddy for years. Jennifer Lopez, who had been photographed at several of Diddy's events during their brief romantic relationship, remained silent. But the most conspicuous absence was Will Smith, who found himself dragged into the scandal after rumors surfaced of his attendance at one of Diddy's private gatherings. Though Smith vehemently denied any involvement, the court of public opinion was less forgiving. The internet exploded with memes, hashtags, and speculative threads dissecting every photo, every interview, every moment that could connect Smith to the growing controversy.
There are so many surprising things in the book, but the thing that surprised me the most.
And then there was Jada Pinkett Smith, whose own revelations about her marriage had already made headlines earlier this year. Some speculated that her candid interviews about their unconventional relationship were an attempt to get ahead of the narrative, to distance themselves from the storm brewing around Diddy. Others weren't so sure. After all, Jada had once described Diddy as a visionary during an awards show speech, a comment that now seemed to carry a far more sinister undertone.
After they are done with Diddy, Jay-Z is up next to be exposed.
But the most jaw-dropping twist of the day came when the prosecution hinted at a connection between Diddy's alleged activities and the long unsolved assassination of Shakur. Though no concrete evidence was presented, the mere suggestion sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Could it be that the events unfolding in this trial were part of a much larger, much older story? And if so, what other secrets were waiting to be unearthed?
Seems pretty clear on the tape she was done with the freak-off. Seems pretty clear the consent had been withdrawn. And by the way, as a legal matter, a woman can withdraw her consent.
As the day's proceedings came to a close, one thing was clear. This was no ordinary trial. This was a reckoning, not just for Diddy, but for an entire culture that had allowed him to thrive unchecked for decades. And yet, as explosive as the day had been, it felt like the surface had barely been scratched. Behind every revelation was another layer, another question, another connection waiting to be explored. Who else was complicit? What else was being hidden? And just how deep did this rabbit hole go? And it didn't stop there. If you thought the courtroom revelations couldn't get any darker, any more tangled with Hollywood's glittering elite, think again. What unfolded next wasn't just a trial. It was a public dissection of an empire and the hidden machinery that powered it. Diddy's alleged network wasn't merely a collection of employees and confidants. Prosecutors began piecing together a sprawling web of complicity that spanned not just the entertainment industry, but luxury brands, financial institutions, and even political connections. This wasn't just about who attended the parties anymore. It was about who made them possible, who benefited, and, most disturbingly, who covered it up. Behind closed doors, deals were allegedly struck to keep Diddy's empire intact. One whispered name stood out, a prominent talent manager who reportedly acted as a go-between for Diddy and A-list stars, ensuring everyone played along or stayed silent. This individual, unnamed in court, was rumored to have brokered introductions between Diddy and Hollywood newcomers, dangling promises of career-making collaborations. Some of these aspiring stars, it was implied, found themselves drawn into situations they couldn't escape. And the price of leaving? Career self-sabotage? Prosecutors suggested that careers have been quietly sabotaged, projects mysteriously pulled, and contracts terminated without explanation. The message was clear: cross Diddy, and you'd find your future in tatters.
A US judge has ruled that the rapper and producer Sean Diddy Combs will stand trial on federal sex trafficking and racketeering charges in May. He'll be held in prison until then. Sean Combs has pleaded not guilty to charges that he used his business empire to transport women and male sex workers across state lines to take part in recorded performances. If convicted, he could face a life sentence. David Willis reports.
One particularly chilling claim involved a well-known luxury brand that had partnered with Diddy on a series of high-profile campaigns. According to insiders, this brand allegedly provided more than just sponsorship dollars. They provided access. Private jets, secluded estates, and exclusive venues were all quietly subsidized, creating the perfect backdrop for the events that were now under scrutiny. The prosecution hinted that executives at the brand were aware of the rumors surrounding these gatherings and chose to look the other way, valuing their partnership with Diddy over the potential fallout. It was a calculated risk, one that now seemed to be unraveling spectacularly.
This morning, rap mogul Jay-Z is denying allegations he sexually assaulted a 13-year-old girl alongside rapper Sean Diddy Combs. That civil lawsuit filed against Combs in October was amended Sunday to include Jay-Z. The accuser, identified only as Jane Doe, says she was assaulted by both men.
But the most shocking twist came when prosecutors unveiled a series of financial records that painted a picture of systematic misdirection. Funds were allegedly funneled through shell companies and offshore accounts, obscuring the true nature of their use. These transactions, described as consulting fees or event expenses, were linked to high-end hotels, private security teams, and even medical services. One entry in particular caught everyone's attention: a payment to a now-defunct media company that specialized in crisis management. The implication? That Diddy wasn't just running his empire. He was orchestrating its defense in real time, anticipating every potential scandal before it could explode.
So, it's interesting because, obviously this civil suit was coming for a while. Yep. And there was some talk between Busby and Jay-Z's lawyers. I think both Busby and Jay-Z's lawyers are really alphas.
The financial trail didn't end there. Prosecutors revealed that some of the funds allegedly flowed into obscure, high-end wellness retreats overseas, billed as corporate offsites or personal development retreats. These retreats, they claimed, were thinly veiled fronts for private gatherings attended by an exclusive roster of celebrities and executives. One of these retreats, held in a remote Mediterranean villa, was described by a former attendee as a fortress, complete with armed guards, no electronic devices allowed, and a strict confidentiality agreement signed on arrival. What actually happened at these gatherings remains shrouded in mystery, but the prosecution hinted that they served as more than just recreational getaways. They were allegedly hubs where Diddy solidified alliances, brokered deals, and, some speculated, ensured loyalty through compromising situations. Adding to the intrigue, an anonymous whistleblower from within Diddy's financial team reportedly provided key evidence that linked some of these payments to off-the-books gifts for influential figures. These gifts ranged from expensive jewelry and rare art to access to luxury real estate for private use. The whistleblower claimed that these transactions were deliberately kept vague to avoid triggering red flags during audits. In one particularly jaw-dropping instance, a property in the Caribbean worth millions was allegedly listed under a shell company connected to Diddy's enterprises, but was later revealed to have been gifted to a Hollywood heavyweight. This revelation raised serious questions about how far Diddy's alleged influence extended and whether these gifts were simply gestures of goodwill or calculated moves to keep certain individuals in his corner. Even more damning was the alleged existence of a secret black book maintained by a former assistant, now turned cooperating witness. This book, according to court testimony, contained meticulous records of names, dates, and locations tied to Diddy's private events. It also allegedly included cryptic notes linking certain individuals to specific favors or arrangements. While the defense dismissed the book as hearsay, the prosecution argued it was a smoking gun, a ledger of transactions that blurred the line between personal indulgence and systemic corruption. The assistant claimed that the book was kept under lock and key and was only referenced in Diddy's inner circle when absolutely necessary. Its existence, prosecutors stated, was proof of just how organized and protected this entire operation had been.
In her civil lawsuit, Cassie said that she was the victim of abuse, assault, and at the hands of Diddy.
And then there was the silence. The deafening, calculated silence of Hollywood's elite. As name after name surfaced, the absence of public statements became its own kind of statement. Why wasn't Jay-Z speaking out? Why had Jennifer Lopez suddenly canceled her upcoming interviews? Why had Will Smith, usually so quick to address rumors, chosen this moment to remain tight-lipped? The prosecution subtly suggested that silence, in this case, was less about ignorance and more about complicity. How many of these stars had attended the parties? How many had witnessed something they wished they hadn't? And how many had benefited from their proximity to Diddy's power?
Hey, real quickly, all that commissary stuff, he's not getting any of that because people in the SHU have an abbreviated list. So he's out of luck. No stake for him. Yeah, he is on suicide watch. This guy thought he would have went home. All of a sudden, he didn't get bond. Remember, the first night that he was there.
Meanwhile, Diddy's legal team wasn't just playing defense. They were going on the offensive. In a move that left the courtroom stunned, they suggested that the entire trial was a coordinated attack, part of a larger conspiracy to dismantle one of the most successful Black entrepreneurs in history. They pointed fingers at rival executives, disgruntled former employees, and even the media, accusing them of orchestrating a takedown. It was a bold strategy, one designed to shift the narrative and cast doubt on the prosecution's motives. But it also raised an uncomfortable question. Was Diddy a victim of his own success, or was he simply too powerful to stop? Until now,
find her. Right, her attorney is trying to find her, and her attorney has said that she may not be willing to come and testify anyway. So,
be interesting. Okay, we're moving on.
And then there was the matter of the missing witness. Just as the prosecution seemed to be gaining momentum, they dropped a bombshell. One of their key witnesses, identified only as victim 3, had vanished. The timing couldn't have been worse. This witness, the prosecution claimed, held crucial testimony that could have tied together several of the allegations. But without her, the prosecution's case suddenly seemed less airtight. Diddy's legal team seized the opportunity, questioning the credibility of the entire investigation. Was the witness truly missing, or had she been scared off? And if so, by whom? The courtroom wasn't the only place where the drama was unfolding. Outside, the media frenzy reached a fever pitch. Crowds gathered daily, hoping for a glimpse of the man at the center of it all. Social media erupted with theories, memes, and debates. One particularly viral thread claimed to have uncovered a secret list of attendees at one of Diddy's infamous gatherings, sparking a firestorm of speculation. Was Beyonce really there? Did you know more than he was letting on? And what about the rumors that a certain tech billionaire had been a silent investor in Diddy's ventures? The line between fact and fiction blurred as the internet did what it does best, turning speculation into a spectacle. But for all the noise, one thing was clear. This trial wasn't just about Diddy. It was about power, privilege, and the culture of silence that had allowed so many to operate unchecked for so long. Every revelation, every leaked photo, every whispered name added to a growing sense that this was bigger than anyone had realized. It wasn't just a scandal, it was a reckoning. And yet, the questions kept piling up. Who else would be dragged into the spotlight? What other secrets were waiting to be exposed? And perhaps most chillingly, how many more victims were out there, watching from the shadows, wondering if they, too, would be called to testify? This wasn't just the story of a fall from grace. It was the story of an empire built on secrets, now crumbling under the weight of its own lies. So, what do you think? Is Diddy the mastermind of a carefully hidden empire of manipulation, or just another scapegoat in Hollywood's endless carousel of scandals? Which of these A-listers knew more than they're letting on? And most importantly, how deep does this go? Let us know your thoughts down below. And as always, we'll see you in the next one. Stay tuned. This is far from over.